Hello, welcome to Terrors of the Milky Way. My name is Dale DuFay. In this channel, as many of you know, we're going to concentrate on the variations and differences we can see in these realities. Now, each reality has its own Earth, and it's at a different location in the Milky Way galaxy. It's the Mandela Effect's proving that the whole Milky Way galaxy, or certainly at least the Sagittarius arm, which is associated with the Orion inner arm or Orion spur, is full of Earths. It's quite obvious. I've experienced many in this region, sector of the galaxy, and as like many of you, originated from the outer reaches of this Sagittarius arm. So those Earths are super Earths. So there's bound to be variations and differences. I remember Japan being at least 800 miles out in the South Pacific. I mean, it was almost towards the equator, closer towards the equator, and way out. So in the North Pacific, further out off mainland China. Here it's actually, here's Russia. This Russia comes down all the way to here. This is Mongolia and China. I remember it being like straight east of China and Korea, because my uncle was stationed in Vietnam. I remember also Vietnam being straight up and down. It didn't have this, looks like an upside down question mark. But the thing is that we can concentrate on this whole area. But I remember Japan, it was always isolated, throughout history. And it made sense because it was so isolated and distanced from the mainland. But this is the closest I have ever seen it. Look at it, it's not even 100 miles to the peninsula of Korea. We can actually do a measurement here. Let's go to the closest point, which is right there by Nagasaki. So we all know about that. That was destiny right there. It's interesting. But see here, the closest point, not even 95 miles. Oh, by the way, Japan in this reality has over 4,000 islands around it, and that they own. So that's remarkable. I always remember just like 4 main islands. Of course, they still have that here. There's this one. I don't have the names of them. There's this one, and this one. But they were like separated more evenly. It just was totally different. But this is the closest I've ever seen it. Even on these Orion dwarfers, this is amazing. I measured the Earth, and of course it's the same 12,400 miles from north 90 degrees north to 90 degrees south, which makes it a 24,800 mile circumference. It's a dwarf Earth. These are incredibly small. And I remember the Mariana Trench being just kind of around Japan. It was obviously on this ridge, but this whole ridge is completely different. Even in between these Orion dwarfers, I noticed differences. But the Mariana Trench is way down here in this one, in this reality. But I remember, in the super Earths, it's everything's kind of spread out more. You don't have this whole side of the Earth being the Pacific Ocean on those super Earths. Everything's spread out more. Japan is further south and way out here. I mean, we can do the measurement. We know it's less than 100 miles from the peninsula of Korea, South Korea in particular, but let's see how close it is to the mainland of China. Well, in this case, Russia. This is unbelievable. So we'll take this point here, add the measurement, come over and see, 175 miles, 176. Let's say we can even bump, it's even less than that. So I've never seen it this close to mainland Asia. If we're going to have to say Asia, because here, early, I think it was 1905, Russia and Japan were at war. I think it was over maybe some of this territory or this stretch here, but Japan beat them. And it was quite surprising, especially on the super Earths, because there was a great distance between Russia and Japan, because Japan was like straight east of China. But here it's so. I mean, it's been like this in a lot of the previous realities, but again, this is the closest I've ever seen it. I couldn't help but notice that atlas I look at all the time that's in front of me. It was like almost like Japan was touching Korea, so that really caught my attention. I've never noticed that before, and sure enough, I always go to Google Earth, and there it is, less than 100 miles. It's remarkable. And then I looked in to articles about Japan and noticed that, it was mentioned they have 4,000 islands. That's incredible. That's what's amazing about these Orion dwarfers is they have, tens of thousands of islands. In fact, nobody can even really count them, it seems like. And I remember the Sagittarius super Earths, or at least the one where this portion of my soul originated from, that reality, it was a commodity. An island was a commodity. They were somewhat rare. Now, of course, there were, the main ones, like Taiwan. This one does not exist on the super Earth, or at least the one I recall, with this peninsula. And some of these realities in the Orion Dwarfer, this is quite a ways off mainland China, this Hanan. Again, this is doesn't exist. This peninsula doesn't exist in a lot of realities. But it's just interesting. We see so much variations and differences in the quantity of islands here. These parcel islands are new. I'm not new again. They've always been here. A lot of these here seem made by humans, but they've always been here in these realities. Nothing's different in this reality. It's always been like this. So what does that tell us? We're inside of a replica version of ourselves that was born here, and that has been sharing your soul. It tells us our soul is splintered and fractured, and each replica version of ourselves has a portion of it. I mean, this is important to realize that, because nothing's changing. This is impossible. It's not Google doing it, because I say it all the time. You can look at any map or any atlas or any globe, no matter how old it is, it's going to be exactly like this. So if something was to change, everything would have to, and that's absolutely impossible. And if you talk to people that around you, who are obviously not affected with the Mandela effect, they still have the original portion of their soul they were born with. So to them, this reality that they were born in has always been the same. That's where the confusion comes in. That's why they don't recognize what you see. And of course, you've always been here too. Nobody's looking at me saying I'm different, unless you went around talking about the Mandela effect, and they certainly wouldn't understand, and they're going to think you're different. And then it can kind of spiral out of control. But the fact is we're obviously in a different reality that has a completely different Earth, which is unusually similar. That's the thing that always gets me. But that's that quantum entanglement. Everything comes, the outcome's always the same. Just like in Japan, when we were measuring from Nagasaki. Now that city had the second atomic bomb, regardless of where it was and what reality. Even though in these realities they had a very difficult time, it was actually quite a miracle that mission and that sortie was actually made, because this wasn't even the primary or secondary city, and they were running out of gas. The B-29, because they flew all the way from Tinian Island, which is I don't even look for in this reality. But the thing is that they should have aborted it before they even took off. But they had to, because in other realities the mission was already the mission didn't have any issues or nothing, and it was a primary target or secondary target in some realities. So basically its fate was set. So regardless of where it is, and I remember it being Nagasaki being 800 miles from mainland China, and here it's only I didn't measure from mainland China over, but Korea. I've just never seen it this close. It's unbelievable. We could measure it right now. Let's just measure, say, from Nagasaki over to mainland China. It's less than 500 miles. And that's something else too that the Doolittle raid had to in 1942. They took off from the USS Hornet out here, and they it was in the Sagittarius super Earths and those realities. The distance from Japan to China, where they had to wind up because there was no way could they return to the carrier. It was a miracle they took off from it. So they had to land in China, and it was a miracle there. But here you could see it was more of a reality, more of a a possibility, because it was crazy why they even planned it in the first place out there. But they had to because it was done here with ease. And same with the Nagasaki bombing. That had to be done because it was done with ease in other realities. Isn't that amazing? It's that quantum entanglement. That's why these Earths are unusually similar, regardless of their size, regardless of where, what the continental layouts are in these island nations. Again, I remember Japan being way out here. And this whole Mariana Trench, which is down here, but I remember it being going vertical, north and south. Here it kind of goes east and west, sort of on not a northeast to southwest angle. But all that was way out in the Pacific, along with Japan. And it's just crazy seeing it here. And of course, Kamchatka, I remember being, hugging tight against the continent of Asia, well, Russia, and not being out like this. It's really something. But it's something that helps us to realize, wow, we're in another reality. There must be something going on with that. The shifting aspect of it has to be very, very. Do you imagine? I imagine that if there are the people in that spirit realm, which of course there are in that other dimension, because what's happening to us is happening in one dimension. But that's not to say there are not other dimensions, and they too. I kind of accidentally said that they're not parallel in that dimension. Well, of course they are, because we see activity from those dimensions in every reality. So that must mean they're parallel as well, of course. But they must look upon us and what's happening to us as something incredibly remarkable. That's why we can't be so upset about it. We should be honored about this, what's happening to us. It's very incredibly special. And that's why this channel will talk about the Earth variations and differences we see, and again, they're not changes. And we will talk more about the spiritual aspect of it. But again, you have to really think what that is doing to our souls. We get to coalesce into replica versions of ourselves throughout the Milky Way galaxy. Sorry about the background noise. We're not that far from a state highway, and it seems like a lot of people here in Michigan can't afford mufflers. And you can't blame them, because the insurance rates are the highest in the country here. Most people are paying more for their insurance than they are for their car payments. So they can't afford to get mufflers. And then, of course, there's that group of people that seem to have to have loud vehicles. And I can't complain too much about them, because I had one myself when I was younger. So, with that aside, I don't like to get too political at all, period. But that's why there's noise in the background, and I apologize for that. I try to block it out the best I can. And you can't time it either, because the loud traffic is probably 1 out of 10 cars, and the traffic is pretty consistent out there. So again, forgive me for that. I know it's kind of cheesy. One of these days I get a soundproof studio. But again, look at how close. This is unbelievable. And the yellow sea is so small. And it doesn't have this, I always call this, looks like a puppy dog. And that always varies considerably. Man, it's just unbelievable. And also, I wanted to go over India a little bit. This part really comes in right there. That's something very different I noticed on the atlas, caught my attention. And I always look at the Bay of Bengal and see it kind of has this Homer profile, Homer Simpson. That always varies considerably too. This part up here has I noticed several realities ago. It's in this one as well, but this is the new part. Again, it's not new. It's not something new to the previous reality. This is a completely different reality where this is not new. It's always looked like this. And it's something we have to always keep in mind. We're in a completely different reality that has always existed along with you. It's just another portion of your soul, the soul you were born with in this replica version of yourself. But getting back to what that's got to be doing, I mean, we must be the envy of the universe because this is happening to us. I mean, I can't say it enough. I think that the Mandela effect is more miraculous than the parting of the Red Sea. I really do. It's as simple as that. This has never happened before. Neither has the parting of the Red Sea, but again, I think this trumps it. This is something that's remarkable. Our souls are being allowed to, like musical chairs, being allowed to get into this flux, this quantum flux that has always existed, this quantum entanglement. But for something happens when our soul portions are in this state. I think it's called superposition if you talk to the quantum physicists. That's when it's not being observed. Something weird happens there, and something's causing it. And obviously, only the person in charge can do this. I mean, but it's causing our souls to be instantaneously, when the music stops in that musical chairs, you sit back down into a reality you've always existed that you never knew about. Think about that. That's got to be incredibly enriching to our souls to the point where we want beyond our comprehension. Again, the thought occurred to me the other day how we must seriously be the envy of the universe because we're being looked down upon as people who are how do you describe it? You know what I'm trying to say? It's crazy, but they're looking down on us and watching what was happening to us, and it's incredible. And they must be looking with great envy. That's an airplane. In case you hear that, we have a small airport nearby too. A little quaint town of South Haven, Michigan. Other than the noise and stuff, it's awesome here. But they must be looking down upon us, those others in the other dimensions, angels, if you will. They look upon us human beings as a whole in general. Back even when we assumed we had a singular existence on a singular earth, even then, with our ignorance, they looked upon us with envy. Believe me. So what's happening to us must be really. We don't really understand how important it may really be, but they do, and they're like, wow, it's got to be cleansing our soul. It's got to be protecting us. That's one of the first things I thought 3 years ago when I realized we were shifting, and that was from a viewer of one of the videos, the early videos in the previous Terrors of the Milky Way channel. It was like the first subscriber, Diane Skywatcher. But anyway, she was the first one to tell me about the shifting because I thought it just happened once, and that I was going to go back, and showing once how life is different, and then go back. But then I realized that this person was right, and then we've been shifting ever since. I mean, and before. I'm not just some of us recognize it at different points of our journey. I'm sure I was shifting long before I realized it, because there were times I was like, wow, what did they do? Completely rearrange the store I was just in here a few days ago, This part's different here. There's sometimes a lot of bays that don't exist, that are here and that are not in other realities. But it still doesn't change the outcome. China's still China. North and South Korea is still North and South Korea. Japan's still Japan. Doesn't matter. The realities are still going to be parallel. And speaking of parallel, North and South Korea is always separated by the 38th parallel, which goes straight horizontal, of course. In the reality I recall on the super Earth, the North and South border line was straight east and west, like this. It didn't go like this. In fact, that's why they called it that. It was right dead on the 38th parallel. And it is here too. So it's like goes across the middle here. So it's appropriate here too. But it is unusual that it's on the 38th parallel in every reality, regardless of what size the Earth is. So that's really quite amazing. That could be why that's a very unusual, well, still to this day. It's a very active, demilitarized zone where both sides are very active in guarding it. It's actually quite unusual. In fact, this war never really ended. It's just a ceasefire, and it's been lasting for decades. But if you ask any North Korean citizen, they'll think that they won the war against the mighty United States of America and South Korea. But then when you look at satellite pictures, you can see who's wrong and who's correct. Again, I don't want to get too political, but it is kind of interesting how the geopolitical situation is identical in every reality, regardless of the geography. It's really amazing. Again, that's that quantum entanglement, and that's really amazing. It's revealing that that's really what holds us all together. I honestly think we couldn't do any automatic bodily functions without it, like breathing and things like that. That's fundamental foundation, basic fundamental foundation of existence is what Mandela Effect's revealing, and it's always and it's being done with these realities that we share that are on dwarf Earths, and realities that we share that are on super Earths and Earths in between. So with that, I thank you for watching, and we'll Google trot at you later. Love you.